Have you ever wondered what it really takes to make Agile work? Well, at the Global Agile Summit, we're bringing you real-life, first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action. Whether you're a leader, a product innovator, a developer, you'll hear practical insights from those who've done it. They'll be telling their own stories from the stage. I'll tell you more about this at the end of this episode, so stay back and listen to the full detailed description of what we have in store for you at the Global Agile Summit. But if you can't wait, you can go right now to globalagilesummit.com and check out our full schedule. For now, on to the episode, but I'll see you at the end of this episode with more details on the Global Agile Summit. Talk to you soon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special bonus episode of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And for this special episode on product delight, we have joining us from Paris, Nesrine Changuel. Hey, Nesrine, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vasco. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Nesrine is a product leader, coach, and author with over a decade of experience at many different companies like Skype, Spotify, Google Meet, Chrome, and she specializes in designing emotionally connected, delightful products. She's authored a book titled Delight. Check out the link in the show notes. And her book introduces a framework for creating lovable tech experiences that drive user loyalty and differentiation. So, Nesrine, let's dive into delight, which is, of course, something that is wonderful to dive into. You talk about emotional connection as one of the key tools to create products that people love. So can you break down what delight means and in a product context and why you think it's so powerful?
Yes, absolutely. So when I talk about delight, I usually refer to creating emotional connection between users and product. So I think most companies nowadays know very well how to solve functional problem of the users. So they try to reach out to users, get closer to the user, understand their pain point, and create solutions that solve for those pain points. That's absolutely necessary, of course, but what I'm usually vocal about is that it's not enough if you want to create sustainable growth, and more particularly, if you want to have your users loving the product and create habit using your product. So when I talk about delight, it's that step extra, meaning that not only solve functional need, but also start to investigate what are the emotional needs, what the user is looking for when using your product from an emotional perspective. And once you identify those needs, maybe start building opportunities in the product so that you can honor those needs. So when I talk about delight, it's mostly about this creation of emotional connection, and it's usually represented by two elements, I would say. The first one is anticipating the needs. So try to anticipate what are those needs and going beyond the needs of those users by surprising them both on the functional and also the emotional level.
So when you describe this, I'm thinking dating. Okay, let me explain this metaphor a little bit. Like when we go on a date, we're meeting someone for the first time. We obviously want to be presentable. So we want to dress up nicely, right? Like we don't want to be all shabby and dirty clothes and whatever. We also want to make sure that we understand the other person to some extent. You can't understand anyone to full extent, not even ourselves can understand ourselves, but you want to understand them to a certain extent. And then you typically want to find something you have in common, like something that kind of connects you beyond the experience of being there in the same space. Is that a little bit what you're thinking when you think about a product?
You're not far, actually, because while you're describing this dating metaphor or example, you're immediately reminding about another example that I can share, and maybe the audience can get the concept much more closely from it. So my very first professional experience has been as a researcher at Alcatel-Lucent at the time. Now it's called Nokia after the acquisition. So I've been working there for about 5 years, and all my ex-colleagues at the time know me and knows how much I love baking. So I'm a big fan of baking. I love trying new recipes and try like crazy French cakes. And probably I have been vocal about that. I've been talking about my experiences during those success and failures during the macaroons and all those crazy things. And I remember why I'm telling you this story, because I remember my very last day when it was time to say goodbye, because I'm moving to another company. So my ex-colleague offered me a gift, like a goodbye gift. And I remember very well that gift was a box, like a baking box. And it was a really delightful experience. It was a mix of joy and surprise at the same time, because it reminds me that those people has been listening to me and they offered something that met my emotional needs and my functional needs. So it's about understanding, not only knowing the users, but it's about understanding them. So it's very similar to what you described, but here is a concrete example that I went through personally.
Yeah, the other example that comes to mind, we were just having a discussion with a friend where he said, I don't understand these people that say thank you to ChatGPT. They never say thank you to their microwave. And that's what hit me in that conversation was that, yes, but wouldn't it be great if your microwave would do something for you that would lead you to want to say thank you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's why, for example, I'm using ChatGPT nowadays, and I'm even paying for ChatGPT. Even some friends are saying, well, but why are you paying? You can get exactly the same thing without paying. I'm saying it deserves it. I mean, I'm getting so much help that honestly it deserves it. Like, I don't care. I mean, it's a way of saying thank you, maybe.
It is definitely a way of saying thank you for sure. And you were talking about how sometimes teams get like stuck, I guess, or they
Yes.
just stop at solving the functional problems. Uh, when we want to help teams to understand this other aspect, like
Yes.
what can we do to help them systematically identify these emotional needs or motivators and transform what might already be a quite decent product into a delightful
Yes.
experience?
So the most cases, and I'm nowadays, so now that I stepped away from my role at Google and I'm coaching organizations from different scales and size, I'm realizing that most features that are built in products are coming from users' complaint. So users are reaching out to the company, they're saying, hey, I want this feature because I'm suffering from XYZ. And then companies start to build those, and they are getting themselves in a hurry and in stress in building all those features requests. What I'm trying to be clear about is that if you want to build emotional connection, it's about opening up a little bit more your source of opportunities. It should not only coming from your users' request, because if the users are requesting it, then it's already too late. So what I try to encourage most people that I coach nowadays and most organizations is to anticipate these needs by trying to get closer to your users when they are not in a negative mood. Let me explain. So if they are already requesting the feature, then they are already setting themselves in a pain situation and they are asking for the feature for it. However, if you reach out to them and anticipate and ask them in a very comfortable and cozy environment, then more opportunities and more feature may come to you as ideas. So I usually encourage people, like most product organization, to, of course, do a habit of users interview, but this is not enough. You need to interview users not only by asking them what they need, but it's more about how do they feel about having the product? How do they feel about experiencing the journey? How do they feel about not having the product? Let me give you an example because it always helps through examples. I've been working on Google Meet, and when I joined Google Meet, it was just the beginning of COVID. So when I joined, my very first mission was to sit down and try to understand what's this new habit, what does this new behavior bring to the user's emotional perspective. So I tried to interview many users and realized that, of course, with the fact that we all moved into video conferencing, like some demotivators started to surface, like boredom, low interaction, overwhelm. Even there was a term that started to show up at the time. It's called Zoom fatigue. So my role and my mission as a PM was to dig into those and try to come up with solutions within Google Meet that could solve for the boredom, for the overwhelm, and for the Zoom fatigue. I mean, well, it was called Zoom fatigue, but it's a fatigue across all video conference tools. So I spent at least 3 months trying just to understand what it is, how many people are experiencing it, at what time they experience those emotional demotivators. And then only after we understood and we came with this very deep understanding, we started to come up with some features that solved particularly for those emotional demotivators. Think about reaction, for example. When you are sending the thumb up in a conversation, that was a feature that we developed aligned with the fact that we wanted user to be more alive and more engaged in a conference meeting. Or think about, I love this example because it was a really good experience for me, and even a good understanding, because when we started looking at this Zoom fatigue perspective, we at that time realized that there was a study that was done by Stanford at the time. They just studied the causes for Zoom fatigue, and they came with one conclusion, that one of the main reasons for Zoom fatigue was the fact of seeing yourself constantly live. Actually, the fact that it's not about seeing you, it's about seeing myself that is fatiguing, because our brain, even if we don't want to, will automatically direct the eyes to check how we look in the tile. So by realizing that and by using that results out of that study, we came into a new feature, was called like a minimize self view. It's as simple as minimizing your tile so that you don't see yourself while still broadcasting your video. So these are just simple examples of features that were developed in Google Meet, but sometimes people don't know why they got developed. They just use it because it's part of they use the product, but they were developed in order to solve for some emotional needs and motivators.
One of the things that I really like about this story is that, okay, so we already had so many things coming our way, like, all the complaints, all the, hey, this is a great feature request. Maybe there's a salesperson that comes from a meeting all excited and suddenly something is in somebody else's backlog or roadmap. And we're kind of always chasing that, right? Like there's always too much stuff to do. And what you're inviting us to think is, instead of thinking about how many and what solutions we could build, why don't we think about what are the experiences that our users are going through that actually make them less happy to use the product, right?
Absolutely. That's why I said, if you're only focusing on solving what users are asking you for, then there will be no surprise in the product. They are expecting it already. I mean, if I'm asking you to add feature X in the product and then you add it, is there a surprise there? No. And by the way, let's get back to the concept of delight. Delight, if we go to the theoretical word, and I did a bit of research into that concept, is a combination of two emotions. Think about it. If you want to be delighted, you have to be in a joyful and surprise moment. So if you have joy plus surprise within the same moment, you're delighted. However, if you only keep honoring my requests, people will be just satisfied but not delighted. You will not go beyond, you will not exceed expectation, and you will not create emotional connection. So
Also,
if you
great tips
want,
for a
yeah,
date, by the way.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It works for all. By the way, this emotional concept exists in cuisine, exists in marketing, exists in design, exists in dating, if you want. But why it's not that common when it comes to building product? That's what I'm
Absolutely.
taking as a mission.
And actually, as I was thinking about the word, I'm reminded in my early career as a product manager, we started using the Kano model to qualify and
Yes.
classify ideas that were coming our way. And the Kano model also has this idea of the delighters, right? Like the
Yes.
things that bring so much value to the people using the product that they not only adopt it, but they become kind of advocates for the product as well.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you talk about this delight grid in your book. So can you walk us through how
Yes.
product teams can kind of make that a practice in their own development process?
Absolutely. By the way, I'm a big fan of Kano model as well. Like I think it's a great way of visualizing. Like if you look at your backlog and you look among the features, you will realize how many are must-have, how many are performances, how many are delighters. And most cases, you don't have enough delighters or zero delighters to be concrete. Now, what I found as a limitation to Kano, and that's why I introduced the delight grid concept, is that it doesn't tell you how you can delight your users. It's just about, so I think we live in a world where everyone agree that we should delight our users, but we just don't know how. And since it's complex, we get back to the performance and the must have very quickly. So how can you introduce delight to your product? That's the question. The very, very first step is to come up with a list of emotional motivators. Let me explain. So when you are building a product, your product is honoring a need. And it's honoring usually two type of needs. There's the functional needs and there is the emotional needs. I've been working at Spotify for about 4 years. I can use the Spotify example as the best way to describe what it is. What is motivators? What are motivators? So if you think about functional motivators, what's the functional motivators for Spotify users? So listening to music or listening to podcasts or nowadays audiobooks or whatever, that's functional need. It's about getting the product. What's the emotional needs? That's what I have been like digging very deep into trying to understand. It's about feeling less lonely. It's about having a company. It's about feeling more productive. It's about feeling connected because you're part of a community. It's sometimes about changing your mood or feeling nostalgic. You see, there are plenty of emotional motivators for using the product. Sometimes I go to Spotify not to listen to music, but to feel a company because I'm feeling lonely in my desk or whatever. So as a product manager, I highly encourage people to start listing the emotional motivators, of course, together with the functional motivators, and have them listed in a spreadsheet. You may ask me, how can I get that? I would say it's through emotional interviewing. You can do some empathy mapping. You can do user journey map. There are plenty of tools nowadays that could be used. It's all about trying to have some empathy toward the user in order to understand those needs. So that's the very first step of the framework. And the second piece, which is the delight grid, once you have those, and it's gold if you have those motivators, you place them into this grid or a matrix, and then you go to your backlog and check among my features how many of them are solving for those functional needs and how many of them are solving for the emotional needs. Very likely you will find that most of the ideas and the solution that you have in your backlog are solving for functional needs and not emotional needs. So if your features are only solving for a functional need, we call those low delight. There is absolutely no delight. If your features are only solving for emotional needs, no functional need, we call this surface delight. The best example is I have an Apple Watch, and last month it was New Year Eve, and on New Year Eve I've got this fireworks, and it was like a happy new year. I mean, it's not harm, it's nice, it gives a smile, but there is absolutely no functional perspective, so it's only surface delight. What I'm more vocal about and what will make your product win is what I call the deep delight. The deep delight is when a feature allows to solve for a functional need and at the same time solve for one or two or three emotional motivators. So that's the delight grid all about. The delight grid is a visualization tool that allows you to classify your features, your idea, and understand how many of them are low delight, how many of them are surface delight, how many of them are deep delight, and try to get more deep delight into your roadmap.
Yeah, and by deep delight, this is exactly finding the most important functional needs, but also some impactful emotional needs, and targeting things that do both of those, right? Like
Yes.
you contrasted it with surface delight, which I guess the example you gave is quite like illustrative of that idea. But then the challenge comes with, okay, so we have all of these features. Maybe there are too many. Maybe we feel overwhelmed by our backlog. And then we just have yet one more dimension to consider. And I don't really know where I'm going to find the emotional needs of my users. What can we do in practice? Let's talk to let's call her Anna. Let's talk to Anna, a product
Okay.
manager who arrived to a new product. Maybe she doesn't yet fully understand the product, but wants to contribute, wants to bring that delight thinking into the team. Like, what are some things we could do in the short and in the medium term to help our teams to first understand the concept and then to actually surface that information that we need in order to
Yeah.
qualify those emotional needs?
Very good question. And the good news is you don't have to change your working processes. So I think PM have seen a lot of framework nowadays, and they are a bit fed up from, oh, again, a new process, a new framework, a new ways of working. So what I'm usually advocate for is that keep the way how you're doing. If you're already doing discovery and delivery processes, then that's great. Just keep doing that. And of course, you have to do discovery. I mean, that there is no brainer. I will not argue, hey, just build features. So when you are in the discovery phase, what I usually encourage Anna or any product manager who wants to embrace this emotional connection concept is to try to put some focus into what motivates users at the emotional need, not only on the functional. It's a mindset, to be clear. So we have been running a lot of user interview over the last couple of years. And when I started, I had that bias toward trying to ask people about what their pain point are or what their need are. And that's one of the biggest mistake. Instead, try to ask open-ended questions like, tell me about the last experience while you have been using product X. Was the biggest challenge? What did you like about it? What are the time, what when were you like frustrated, or and when was it unclear? And then look at what they say, look at what they do, look at even what they think, and try to take notes. Let me give you an example. I've been working at Google Chrome for a couple of years, and we at some point wanted to improve people having like to have less open tabs. I guess you're one of them. I mean, we are all experiencing having plenty of open tabs, and that creates a bit of frustration, feeling lost, and particularly in mobile, because at desktop it's another concept. We open tabs because for productivity reason, but for mobile we said, hey, people are leaving a lot of open tabs. What are the reason for like leaving tabs open? So we did a lot of users interview, and we realized that people leave tab open because they think about them as reminders. Like if a tab is open, it means that I need to get back to them. Or people keep tabs open because they just don't care. They move from a tab to another. And so the reason why people are leaving tabs open could can vary from a person to another, and you can classify those into personas. But one of the surprise that we or I realized during the interview is that there've been we were able to identify frustration moments. For example, one of the users at some point said, oh, sorry, I usually don't have so many open tabs. Like there've been a bit of a feeling of shame or like anxiety. So these are things that you take note of. So if you're asking me, how can I identify those emotional motivators? Is by listening and giving like this active listening and pay attention to what the user is saying every single second throughout the interview. So when the user is saying, oh, sorry, I'm not having so many open tabs usually, that's a key element. And we put that into emotional motivators like, oh, people want to feel organized. People want to feel like comfortable as well toward the product. So I would say there's no magic. It's about interviewing users, listening to what they say and pay attention without biasing them toward the solution. Don't ask them, what do you want us to build for you? Or what are your pain points and how can we solve those for you? Because you're already biasing them if you do so.
Well, one of the things that I realized, so I do some work with startups and incubators, and we very often interview the teams about their like what they are finding in their user interviews, how they are tackling those. And one of the things that I realized is that in technical teams, they pay very little attention to the emotional reactions of the users during the interviews, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember one team telling me, oh, they were doing an assistant that would work in a car to do something specific with car. I think it was about finding parking place so that you could take the train to the big city or something like that. But they were expressing this interview discussion with the customer where the customer said, I don't know, I think it was like anger or something like that, but a clear emotion that came out in the conversation, and the team just kind of overlooked that. Like they kind of implicitly turned that into, oh, this is a functionality problem, we're going to fix it this way. And I was like, but wait. That frustration, that's where the golden pot is. Like, this is where you find the real impact in the user. Why were they frustrated? What were they trying to do? What did they expect was going to happen, right?
I love it because I use as well a customer journey map. It's a simple, very well known techniques, and it's about allowing to draw the user journey throughout using the product. And one of the elements of the customer journey map is feeling. So there is, of course, activities, touch points, and feelings. And I realized that many teams like ignore this element, like feeling. And you know what? It's actually the best part of the framework. That feeling element in the matrix is the best. And I will tell you something. So if you do the exercise very well, and I'm advocate for the customer journey map because I love it, and let me tell you why. If you put the feeling element into your journey map, and then you draw a line, like how many times you have high emotion, how many of them low emotions. These, I call them valet moments and peak moments. So if you're experiencing very low feeling instant, then you're into those valet moments. And if you're experiencing very high and positive emotion, then you're into these peak moments. And I call those two categories pivotal moments. Pivotal moments means that these are opportunities for connecting with the users at the emotional level. And by the way, get me right, it's about both the negative and the positive. If the user is experiencing positive emotion, then celebrate that moment with them. Tell them that we are here. And if they are experiencing low emotion, figure out how you can convert that into a better moment. So I call those peaks and valley moments as opportunities to connect with users at the emotional levels.
Yeah, and those are really opportunities because we can turn a frustration into delight by tackling the reason for the frustration or offering an alternative, right? Like they are really pointing to something important, is what it means, right?
Yeah, I will give you another example. I love examples. And I've been in Sweden like 4 weeks ago. And I went there for business, and I took the opportunity to meet with some ex-colleagues from Spotify and Skype. So we went to a restaurant. It's called the Griffins. And it's a nice restaurant, by the way. It went super well, nice vibe, nice food, nice service. But you know, when you go to a restaurant with friends or colleagues, what's the most frustrating moment? It's usually the payment moment because you don't know who's gonna pay what, and you already forgot what you ordered. And I hate that moment. I personally hate it because it's a moment of frustration. And I think the restaurant realized that that's one of the frustration moment that they needed to solve for. And it was a great surprise for me because I never experienced that before. So it was a real delighter. The waiter came with a note, and on the note there is a QR code. And when you scan the QR code, it gets you to an app. And in that app, you have everything that was ordered by the group. And all you have to do is to check and pick those that you consumed. Of course, you have also the ability to split. Like if you were 10, you split by 10, and that's completely free for you. You have the possibility to add tips. But what relief. What a relief that experience was. Like I've been very, very surprised. And I turned that moment of frustration and like a fear into something super, super fun.
I
Nice.
really love that example. I can only imagine what that would look like in Portugal, because in Portugal we have this very clear formal protocol about deciding who pays for the dinner. It usually is one. I mean, if it's a big group, it's different. But if it's like, let's say, 4 or 5 friends, there's always usually someone says, "No, I'll take care of this," and then everybody else is supposed to say, "No, no, 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 I take care of this." And then there's this kind of and the app could just say, "Okay, fine, we'll just all pay. Here's the just tip it here, and that's it."
Yes. I think the app in Portugal will be like, okay, you need to do like a roulette or something, and who would
Yeah,
pay for
who paid
everyone?
last time would be the first question in the
Yes,
app.
yes, yes. I mean, it's an app, so it can track your history. Honestly, I mean, for a restaurant, that's a delighter. And in order to introduce delighters, you absolutely have to have the fundamental ready. And the fundamental were there. I mean, it was good food, good service, good vibe, everything. And then they added this extra, and I loved it.
Yeah. One other delight for me in restaurants is when they have soundproofing on the walls,
Oh
because for
yes,
me, I am very sensitive to noise. So, like when there's a lot of cacophonic noise, so lots of mixed conversations, it's very hard for me to hear my
yeah,
friends, right?
yeah,
And that's another delight. Like
yes,
maybe most restaurant owners don't think about that, but that
absolutely,
affects a certain percentage of the restaurant goers for sure.
yeah.
That was a great story. Now, of course, we want to read your book, and the link is in the show notes. The book is Delight, so be sure to check it out, everybody. But what is one other resource besides your own book, Nesrine, that you would recommend for people that want to go deeper into this understanding delight and understanding how to bring it to their product practice?
Yes. So, what I want to clarify is that this concept of emotional connection is not something new. And as I said earlier, it's something that is very wide among marketing. There's this emotional marketing. It's also very wide among designers. So, if you go and talk to your designer, they will probably have heard about a book called Emotional Design. It's very, very recommended book, by the way, by Don Norman. And then there is another great one. It's called Designing for Emotion by Aaron Walter. So those are great resources, but are very much built toward design. So how can you design a great emotional product? What has been missing so far is more like a book toward creating emotional products for product folks, for product community. And that's what I'm trying to build throughout this book. The closest or the other recommendation I could recommend is, of course, the book by Dan Olson, like the product playbook, where he detailed the concept of Kano. We spoke a little bit about Kano, but again, Kano is great to understand what delight is. But what I'm trying to introduce through my book is a how. Okay, now that you understand what delight is and you're convinced that you need to introduce that, how can you identify those emotional motivators? How can you bring that into your product? So I think it's good to educate yourself from a design perspective and then also complement with the book that I'm writing about. The other thing that we didn't touch today, and I highly recommend, and I strongly believe that if you work in a trio or a trio and you work with teams, it's very important to have the same language. So if the marketing team believe in the emotional connection and the designer believe in the emotional connection, and then suddenly engineers and PM don't even know what you're talking about, that creates a gap. So that's also another way of leveraging conversation and allow for a better flow toward the best and a common goal.
Absolutely. And where can we find your book specifically?
Okay, so the book is actually under construction, if we can say. So the plan is to get it ready in April or early May. So that's the plan. So hopefully it will be ready on Amazon, and would love to get your feedback on it.
Absolutely. And if people want to contact you, maybe, if they can't find a book for some reason, maybe they just want to shoot you a message, get in touch with you, where should they go?
Of course, they have to, by the way. I'm very open, very available. They can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. I also have a Substack newsletter. It's called the Delight Tips. And I share weekly some delight tips and delight stories for people who love stories. The idea is to keep this message flow and enhance this concept of delight and emotional connection. So they can subscribe to the newsletter. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And and of course, if they want to have any support or any conversation, or if they have example of delight they want to share with me, I encourage them to.
Absolutely. So check out LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes, and also Nesrine's Substack newsletter, Delight Tips. The link is also in the show notes. And by the way, Substack is a great place to go and get some amazing insights from practitioners that are very generous with their knowledge. Just like you have been with us today, Nesrine. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Hey friend, thank you for staying. Here is all you need to know about the Global Agile Summit. If you've ever suffered or know people who are suffering from agile fatigue, this event is for you. Agile fatigue is that feeling that settles in when we can't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. We get discouraged, especially when conversations revolve around the same old frameworks, the same old buzzwords and theories. We don't feel that energy anymore. Well, the Global Agile Summit is a different kind of event. We're bringing you real-life first-person stories of Agile succeeding out there in the real world that will inspire you to take action and transform the way you work. The Global Agile Summit will happen in Tallinn, Estonia, May 18th, that's the workshop day, and then 19th and 20th, the conference day. And Tallinn, Estonia is one of the most innovative tech hubs in Europe. The Global Agile Summit is hosted together with Latitude 59, which is kind of a citywide celebration of software startups and groundbreaking ideas. And we'll have a shared ticket for you to attend those events as well. So who will be speaking? Well, we've got an incredible lineup of thought leaders in software and Agile. For example, Clinton Keith, the person who literally wrote the book on game development with Scrum and is busy bringing Agile to the world of game development. You must check his session. The very famous and well-known Jürgen Apelo, author of Management 3.0, will be talking and exploring about AI's impact on leadership. We also have Gojko Adzic, who's taking an unconventional look at the product growth with his lizard optimization keynote. Other speakers include, for example, Sven Dietz, who's challenging everything we know about software development by literally ditching contracts and estimates. Can you imagine? His teams deliver software before their competitors are even done with the contract negotiation. How agile is that? But there's more. We'll cover engineering practices in our developer track with talks on, for example, AI-assisted test-driven development, developing products in minutes with a different approach to how we develop, configure, deploy platforms, and much more. We also have a product track where we cover cutting-edge ideas around product discovery, delighting customers with product delight frameworks. We'll have a talk about that. And we also have an agile business track where we will talk about, for example, open strategy, a very agile approach to managing organizations and delivering software faster to clients, faster than you can even write a contract. Literally, I mean, I already told you about Sven Dietz's story. It's amazing. It definitely is a must-see. I'm sure you'll be inspired and get a lot of ideas for your own software projects and software delivery. Now, whether you're a business leader, a product innovator, or a developer, you'll definitely find value in our 3 focused tracks. That's Agile Business for those working with businesses and organizations, Agile Product for product managers, product owners, and innovators, and Agile Developer for the builders, making Agile work in practice, the coders, the testers, the designers, the producers, the Scrum Masters, you name it. If you join, you will meet over 200 Agile professionals from all over the world. People who, just like you, want to grow, want to share, and want to learn by challenging the ideas that don't work anymore. At the Global Agile Summit, you'll get new connections, fresh ideas, and the energy to take your own Agile to the next level. And who knows, maybe even find your next career opportunity. So don't miss out. Check out the full program and grab your ticket now at globalagilesummit.com. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all in Tallinn, Estonia in May. I'll see you there.